It was the 7th year that Anna and I had been together when a man, her best male friend, started appearing more often in her life. They were inseparable, always on the same wavelength. Every day, Anna bought 2 bouquets of flowers, one for him, one for me. But there was never any sign of something inappropriate between them. Until one day, that man asked her, "If it had been me who met you first, would you have married me?" Anna didn't answer. Instead, she shattered my favorite vase. Today, Anna was distracted, her mind clearly elsewhere. She hesitated several times to speak but swallowed her words. In the end, I was the one to break the silence. "Did something happen?" Anna sighed deeply. "Becky's husband is away on a business trip. She's scared being by herself and wants me to keep her company. But your arm isn't healed yet, and I know it's hard for you to do anything. I guess I'll just let her find someone else." As she spoke, I watched her closely, noticing how sincere her tone was, how deeply she seemed to care. She met my gaze without flinching, her eyes full of uncertainty. "What's wrong?" I shook my head. "Nothing. Go ahead. I'll be fine here." "What about you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'll have my mom come over to take care of me. A while ago, I'd been in a car accident and fractured my arm." Anna had been terrified. When I was in surgery, she had cried outside the operating room, and even when we returned home, she never left my side. She did everything for me herself. "What if something happens? You're alone, what if you get hurt again?" she'd worry. "Your hands are for designing houses. I don't trust anyone else to take care of it." Even when she had work obligations, business dinners, or trips, she'd wait until my mom could come, giving her countless instructions to look after me properly. It had become almost comical, with my mom jokingly asking if she was my real mother. "This is my son. Do you think I'm going to let him suffer?" But today, she hesitated only for a second before agreeing. "All right. Take care of yourself. I'll come back as soon as I can. Call me if anything happens." She left in a hurry, grabbing only a change of clothes. I didn't move. I sat there, even smiling and waving as she glanced back at me. When the door clicked shut, I stayed still. But once my rigid back relaxed, I realized something was off. Anna was acting strange. From the moment she spoke to me, everything felt out of place. But I didn't say a word. I didn't ask a single question. Because I knew exactly where she was going, and who she was meeting. At first, I didn't know his name. I only knew his last name was Gray, and Anna always called him Mr. Gray. The first time I met him was a year ago. I waited for Anna in a newly opened cafe downstairs from her office. I hadn't told her I'd be there, thinking I'd call her around lunchtime. But then, she walked in unexpectedly. The man at the counter, who had been slouched and half asleep, straightened up when he saw her. Anna smiled brightly at him. He gave a small, playful smile in return and gestured an "okay" with his hand. There was a silent understanding between them. I've always thought that unspoken connection between men and women is a dangerous thing. It can make them believe they're meant to be. But at that moment, the thought flickered in my mind and quickly faded. I didn't think much of it. Later, Anna saw me and looked surprised. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I was waiting for you to have lunch together," I replied. "Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to interrupt your work." I teased, then asked, "How come you're downstairs?" She rubbed her temple in frustration. "Work's been stressful, so I decided to get some air and grab a coffee. By the way, the little cookies here are really good. You should try them." She raised her hand to get the waiter's attention. "Mr. Gray, another batch of those little cookies, please." When the waiter looked confused, Anna smiled and introduced me. "This is my husband." The whole encounter was remarkably casual. Anna introduced me like it was nothing. He greeted me just as easily, and even picked up the tab for us. Anna said the coffee here was authentic, and that she'd been to this cafe once before and liked it. Since then, her company had been ordering their afternoon tea here regularly. Over time, I thought they were just regular customers, and the cafe was just a casual stop for them. What I didn't know was that the delicious cookies they served weren't actually for sale. And I had no idea that Henry Gray would later text Anna asking, "If it had been me who met you first, would you have married me?" Anna sent me a message at 10 p.m. She said she had just finished dinner with Becky and was getting ready to rest. She was too tired and wouldn't be video calling me tonight. She reminded me to take care of myself and to call her if anything came up. I replied to each message, reassuring her not to worry and that I was fine. Then, I asked the cafe's waitress, "What about Mr. Gray? Why isn't he here tonight?" The young woman, naive and unguarded, smiled at me, sensing the familiarity in my tone. "He went out this afternoon. Today is our boss' birthday, he must be on a date with his girlfriend, holding a big bouquet of roses, so romantic." I nodded and took my coffee to go. This city was big, and it would be hard to find two people in it. But Anna had bought me a smartwatch, one that I slipped into her purse before she left. She had gotten it for me last year. "Now I can always know where you are. I just want to check in on you. Is that okay?" She had said playfully, a hint of possessiveness in her voice. But I knew, more than its tracking function, what Anna cared about was the health monitoring feature. I had collapsed once due to work stress, and it had scared her to death. She wanted to keep track of my health, to monitor me in real time. As someone who loved her, I accepted it without hesitation. That watch was expensive, and it tracked my heart rate and pulse with impressive accuracy, while its location precision was also top-notch. Now, it showed that it had been on the 12th floor of a hotel for the last 3 hours. I didn't rush over that night. My arm ached a little, so I took a painkiller and then a melatonin to help me sleep. I lay on the soft bed, the white noise from the sleep aid filling the room. But still, I couldn't fall asleep. It was just like that night over a month ago. It was the first time I had snooped through Anna's phone. She had been restless. She cut her hand while peeling an apple for me. She broke a cup while pouring me water. Angry, she kicked the chair in front of her across the room and knocked over my favorite vase. As I looked at the wreckage of the house, I remained silent. Anna finally calmed down. She stared at the broken pieces of the vase, a look of frustration crossing her face. But she didn't say a word. Instead, she silently began to clean up. Later that night, I woke up, startled. There was no one by my side. The living room light was dim, casting a soft, yellow glow. Anna had been drinking on her own and had passed out drunk. With a feeling of impending doom, I unlocked her phone. The chat screen was still open. The contact named Mr. Gray had sent a message earlier that afternoon. "If it had been me who met you first, would you have married me?" Anna hadn't replied. She hadn't responded at all. But that night, my heart died in her phone that I arrived at the hotel at 6 a.m. with the marriage certificate in hand. I placed everything on the front desk and said, "Anna is my wife. I need to know which room she booked. If you can't tell me, I'll call the police." I had no energy to argue with anyone. I was exhausted. Mentally and physically drained. The receptionist stood frozen for a long time. Her surprise gave way to hesitation, and then to pity. "Please wait, I'll check for you right away." She quickly gave me the room number, then asked if I needed any help. I smiled and shook my head. After gathering my things, I headed upstairs. Anna didn't make me wait long. I stood outside her door for less than 40 minutes before the door opened. Henry was standing there, gripping the doorknob. Behind him, a pair of slender arms were wrapped around his waist. "Henry, thank you, but..." "I'm sorry." "Thank you? For what?" "Sorry? For what exactly?" It seemed like some kind of private code between them. A look of sadness crossed Henry's face as well. "Anna, George, what are you doing here?" The air seemed to freeze at that moment. The hands wrapped around Henry's waist shrank back as if burned. But she didn't step out from behind him. "Aren't you leaving?" I spoke up. "George." Anna's face was pale, and her voice was trembling. I felt the same way. My hands, clenched behind me, were shaking. I thought I was mentally prepared, that I could handle this calmly. But in that moment, I realized I could barely stand. "Where's the car?" "In the underground parking lot." "Let's go." I accidentally hit my bandaged hand against the wall, and a sharp pain made me gasp. "George." Anna rushed to help me. "Don't touch me." I growled. She lowered her head, stubbornly refusing to listen. I raised my hand, wanting to push her away. But Henry suddenly stepped forward, pulling Anna behind him. "What do you think you're doing?" I sneered. "What do you think I'm going to do, hit her?" "I won't let you touch her." I nodded. "Fine, then keep her. But remind her to divorce me first." "George." Anna shook Henry off. "Let's go home." Henry looked hurt. "I'm trying to help you." Anna took a step back. Shut up. She didn't spare Henry a glance. Instead, she kept her eyes on me and spoke again. George, let's go home. George, I can explain. Yesterday was Henry's birthday. He doesn't have any friends here, and just wanted me to keep him company. I was just with him for his birthday. Nothing happened between us. It was wrong of me to lie, and I'm sorry. I was just afraid you'd be angry, afraid you'd overthink things. I was wrong. If it bothers you, I won't see him again. He's just a friend. George, please don't ignore me. Can you talk to me? Don't scare me like this. Since we got home, Anna has said a lot. Explanations, apologies, self-blame. I wanted to speak, to say something. But my throat felt like it was filled with cotton, and no words could escape. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to say. In the end, all I could manage was, one word at a time, Anna, let's get a divorce. My words made Anna tremble. She clenched her fists and tightly closed her eyes. When she opened them again, it was as if she had suppressed the emotions threatening to spill out. We really didn't do anything, we just drank and talked. George, please don't do this. I know you're angry, it's my fault, I was wrong, and I'll accept whatever punishment you give. But you have to believe me, I didn't do anything to hurt you. What does hurting me even mean? You must have hugged him, kissed him too. You smell like his cologne. And here. I pointed to her lips, a bite mark. Anna flinched, her lips tightening. I looked at her sadly. How far do you want to take this? Do you want to catch me in the act? You spent the entire night with him, alone in a room. How am I supposed to trust you? Anna, how can I trust you? Anna's head dropped in defeat. George, I was wrong. I was out of my mind, but I swear, nothing more happened. Please, for the sake of all the years we've spent together, give me one more chance. And I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. She took my hand and placed it on her stomach. I froze. Slowly, I looked down at her belly. Confusion. A moment of confusion. I quickly pulled my hand away. What did you say? I'm pregnant. When did you find out? Anna was silent. You knew, and didn't tell me? You knew and still spent the night with Henry? Anna, what are you trying to do? I clenched my teeth, my voice hoarse and trembling. I felt like a cornered beast. You don't want this child, do you? Is it because of Henry? How dare she use this child as leverage, at this moment? Divorce. Anna, I want a divorce. This year marks the 7th year I've been with Anna. A friend joked, 7 years together, have you had any problems in your relationship? I laughed, we've only been married for 3 years. But you've been together for 7. Maybe we should have a baby. It's about time. But the truth is, we never tried to prevent pregnancy from the start. There was a time when Anna became very anxious about it. She couldn't understand why she couldn't get pregnant. We went to the hospital for all kinds of tests. All the results came back normal. The only advice was for us to adjust our mindset. To protect Anna from the stress, whenever someone asked why we didn't want kids, I always said, I haven't had enough of our time together, no one can take Anna away from me. We both looked forward to having a child. I used to imagine that if one day I found out Anna was pregnant, we'd be so happy we'd go crazy. But she didn't tell me. She was pregnant. She had the test done, but didn't tell me. Even without thinking deeply about it, I knew, she must have hesitated. Hesitated about whether or not to keep the child. Why? Because of Henry. The appearance of another man made her uncertain whether she wanted to have a child with me. How ridiculous. How tragic. Strong emotions surged through me, crashing against my nerves. Finally, I vomited. I knelt by the toilet, clutching it. It was the kind of pain that felt like my insides were being torn apart. Anna desperately pounded on the door. She begged me to open it, begged me to come out. She screamed, telling me not to joke with my own body. I sat there on the floor, feeling like the biggest failure in the world. I wished I could end it all with some grace. But by the time Anna began wavering, my dignity had already been trampled into the dirt. That night, I slept in the guest room. Maybe it was because I was too exhausted, but I quickly fell asleep. The next morning, before I even woke up, Anna had already prepared a full breakfast. When I came out, she forced a smile and stood up. She probably hadn't slept well. Her face was pale, her lips devoid of color. If this were before, I would have been heartbroken. But now, my heart felt as still as stagnant water. George, eat something. I kept my face blank. Anna, we need to talk. She stood there for a long time before finally nodding. Okay. Where do I even begin? I said to Anna, I gave you a chance, and I even thought about pretending nothing happened. Anna froze, looking at me, confused. I gave a bitter smile. That day, Henry asked you, if you had met me first, would you have married me? Because of that question, you became anxious, angry, and couldn't sleep the whole night. When you were drunk in the living room, I looked through your phone. I had always thought going through a partner's phone was a bad idea. Once you start doing that, the gap between you has already formed. If there's no trust between two people, why stay together? But despite that belief, I still found myself in this position. My words made Anna freeze. Her body leaned back slightly, an instinctive attempt to run away. She clenched her fists and took a deep breath. But I didn't reply to him, she said softly. I rubbed my aching eyes, which felt sore and dry. Yeah, you didn't reply, but that's worse than if you had. The silence grew heavy once again. Anna opened her mouth several times but finally said, if you'd seen everything, you should understand. I've never crossed any lines with him before. I only saw him as a friend. That night, yes, we drank too much, and we were a little dizzy, but it stopped there. We didn't go any further. George, I swear, I didn't betray you. I didn't look at Anna. I just exhaled a long, exhausted breath. On April 3rd, we planned to go see a movie. We hadn't been to one in a long time. I bought the tickets, reserved a restaurant, I was really looking forward to it. But suddenly, you said you didn't have time because of an important meeting. But in reality, Henry had asked you to go fishing. You ordered 2 bouquets of baby's breath every day. One you'd give to him in the morning, the other you'd bring back for me at night. The only difference is that on February 14th, you took the roses, 19 roses, and gave them to Henry. The building you live in has a private elevator that requires an internal card. Henry complained about how long it took to wait for the elevator, so you gave him one. You said your shoulder hurt, so he went to the hospital and got you some pain relief patches. For a while, your body always smelled like medicine. When I asked, you said you bought them yourself. On your birthday, after I fell asleep, you went downstairs in the early hours, and Henry gave you a watch. He asked if he was the first to wish you a happy birthday, and you said yes. Every day after work, you'd talk to him on the way home, 27 minutes of conversation at normal speed. You could say 2,000 or 3,000 words. How long has it been since we've talked that much, except in the early days of our relationship? Anna's conversations with Henry made her feel like a stranger to me. No, not a stranger. It shouldn't even be called that. This was how Anna had been back in college, lively, talkative, even a bit childish. It was just that now, the person she was talking to wasn't me. That feeling, like ants crawling under my skin, almost consumed me. Anna's head hung lower. She spoke with no conviction, I only see him as a friend. Sometimes I get tired, and I talk to him. We're just talking. George, what do I have to do for you to believe me? A deep sense of helplessness dragged me down. Anna, do you know how much I wish you had already cheated? Your closeness with him, your chemistry, it's like a guillotine hanging over my head, and I don't know when it'll fall. I can only wait, on edge. I thought about pretending I didn't see it. I even hesitated, wondering if I should turn a blind eye. I really did hesitate. I love Anna. We've been together for 7 years. They didn't really do anything. Should I face it directly and wake up, or should I just let it slide? But the truth is, when I turned off my phone and went to bed, pretending nothing happened, that was when I made my choice. I thought I could do it. But ever since I found out about all this, I've lost my trust in you. As soon as you're out of my sight, I start to wonder if you're with him. What are you talking about? What are you doing? Those doubts gnaw at me every minute. I'm going crazy, Anna. You're driving me insane. My eyes felt like they were about to burst, aching with the pain of holding back tears. That was the hardest month and a half of my life. I almost felt like I had gone mad. Until Anna agreed to spend the night with Henry. He said, maybe this way, I can finally let go. Anna, please feel sorry for me. Anna replied, okay. At that moment, the guillotine finally fell. I felt like I was walking toward my death. Anna, let's get a divorce. Anna refused. She said she was willing to make any compromise except for divorce. She promised she'd stop working overtime, stop socializing, come home on time every day, clean the house, and cook for me. Watching her busy and eager to please, I felt really sad. This was all unnecessary. I've never been one to believe in making up for things after they've happened. Divorce is hard. It wasn't until I wanted a divorce that I realized how difficult it truly is. If one party refuses, the only option is to file a lawsuit. From filing to the court hearing, it takes at least a month. Unless there's a major fault, the first trial won't grant the divorce. So, we'd have to wait another 6 months to file again. Would the second trial grant the divorce? Maybe, perhaps, possibly. It was torturous. So, I decided to move out. What are you doing? Where are you going? I ignored Anna's words and continued packing my clothes into the suitcase. She went mad, knocking my things over. What more do you want from me? I've admitted my mistake, apologized, and promised there won't be a next time. Why can't you just let it go? Am I really that unforgivable? After all these years, can't you give me just one chance? George, I'm begging you, can't we just stop fighting? I grabbed the shirt in my hand and crushed it, throwing it onto the floor in frustration. Anna, I'm begging you, stop disgusting me. Anna stepped back, frightened, her eyes welling up. She clutched her stomach and leaned against the doorframe. I'm not divorcing you, I'm pregnant. You can't divorce me. Those were the last words she said before collapsing. The doctor later diagnosed it as due to emotional stress and excessive worry. Her parents rushed over. They immediately began yelling at me, accusing me of how I'd been treating Anna. They asked if I had been bullying her or making her suffer. I was too tired. Too tired to even speak. I just sat there, silent, enduring. Stop it, Mom, Dad. Anna nervously looked at me. George. I slowly raised my head and looked at the family of 3 in front of me. I want a divorce from Anna. What did you say? I said I want a divorce from Anna. You bastard. Her father shouted, and without warning, he punched me in the face. Dad. Anna screamed, rushing to stop him, but her mother held her back. You've spoiled him. Now, you are pregnant, and he wants a divorce? Does he have someone else? Anna froze, standing still. I let out a bitter laugh, wiping the blood that had started to trickle from the corner of my mouth. Anna, I'm getting this divorce. Because of the scene I caused, my intention to divorce Anna quickly spread to everyone. At first, my parents didn't understand. But once I told them the real reason, they fell silent. Anna's parents didn't try to talk to me anymore. I'm sure they had figured out the truth by then. Only Anna still clung to hope. While she was in the hospital, she called me many times, but I didn't pick up any of them. She even called my parents. At first, my parents were hostile, but when Anna softened and repeatedly mentioned the child, they began to waver. Maybe we should just let it go, after all, Anna's pregnant. Yes, Anna is pregnant. Everyone thinks this should be a protection from suffering card. But in reality, it's the final straw that broke the camel's back. I loved her so much. I was wholeheartedly looking forward to the arrival of our child. But what about her? She stabbed me in the heart. Blood poured out, deep to the bone. The feeling of being betrayed by someone you love, it's a constant, unbearable torture. I hate her. I don't trust her anymore. How am I supposed to spend the rest of my life with her? Do I really have to wait until our marriage is rotten to the core before I can let go? Anna stayed in the hospital for 15 days. Henry came once, bringing fruit baskets and flowers, claiming he was there to check on her. But Anna turned cold for the first time. Go away, don't come back. Henry stood there in silence for a few seconds, forcing a smile. What do you mean? You don't answer my calls, don't reply to my messages. What, we can't even be friends anymore? Is it because George still has misunderstandings? I can go explain to him, Henry. Anna cut him off. Let's not talk again after this. These were things I was never meant to know. But Henry made sure to come and tell me himself. He was smoking, looking utterly defeated. I thought I could win over you. You're just someone who came first. But now, I've lost. I'm stepping aside. She's yours. His self-pitying monologue only made me laugh bitterly. Did Anna ask you to do this? Henry gave a tired smirk. Her last request. Of course, I had to fulfill it. Really? A love so deep that it won't regret? I called Anna. George, I'll be discharged soon. You'll come pick me up, right? Anna. I said, my voice calm, if you have this child and one day he asks us why we want a divorce, how will you explain it? Yes, during her pregnancy or breastfeeding period, I couldn't file for a divorce. But those periods wouldn't last forever. And I would definitely get a divorce. Why? Anna growled. I've already apologized to you like this, I've begged on my knees, I cried. What more do you want? I just made one mistake. Do I deserve the death penalty? Won't you give me just one chance? George, is your heart made of stone? It was the first time she hung up decisively. She said, I won't divorce you. When you've calmed down, we'll talk again. Anna was discharged from the hospital. She returned home, but didn't contact me. However, her mother called me repeatedly. At first, her tone was gentle. Then, she became angry. George, you're a man. Don't you have any tolerance? Anna just made a friend of the opposite sex. Nothing really happened, yet you can't let it go? I had already prepared myself for worse. But then I heard that Anna's mother was in the hospital. What happened? I asked a friend. He shook his head. Not sure. It seems she had an argument with Anna's dad, but no one knows the details. What's the situation now? She's awake, but she's crying like crazy, saying she wants to die. I sighed in relief. As long as she was awake, it was fine. My mother asked, aren't you going to go see her? I was busy with work and didn't look up. No. Since we've decided to go our separate ways, we shouldn't do things that might give each other false hope. It's strange. People can seem to grow up overnight. At first, I thought Anna's betrayal would leave me in agony, to the point of wanting to die. But as the days passed, I found myself not feeling as miserable anymore. I began to face it, my marriage was a failure. I didn't plan on visiting Anna's mother, but she called me, asking to see me. I don't have any other intentions, George. I just have some things I want to say to you. Her voice sounded sorrowful and low. It made me hesitate for a long time. But in the end, I still went. In just a few days, Anna's mother visibly aged. It was the same with Anna. She had lost so much weight, looking as if she might collapse any moment. Lost, helpless, and in pain. She said, George, thank you. Thank you for coming to see my mom. I nodded at her and walked into the hospital room. Anna's father had an affair. To be more precise, he had found his true love and wanted a divorce. And his so-called true love was 2 years younger than Anna. He said he had never felt so connected to anyone before. They eat together, fish together, travel together, and never run out of things to talk about. He said he felt like he was living again. He said he had sacrificed his whole life for this family, so why shouldn't he live for himself now? The more Anna's mother spoke, the more agitated she became. He said he only had responsibility for me and this family. He said I was the one who trapped him here. Why? Does he think he's the only one who's sacrificed for this family? He's denying everything we've built together with just a few words, pretending to be so noble. I won't support them. I will never support them. If he wants a divorce and to be with his mistress, it's not happening. Anna's mother shook my hand, trembling. George, you understand, don't you? You're the only one who knows what I've been through. He's forcing me to the brink of death. As she spoke, I finally understood why she wanted to see me and tell me all this. It turns out that when the knife doesn't stab yourself, you don't know how painful it is. Before, she had downplayed Anna's mistakes, dismissing them as a mere misunderstanding, accusing me of not being magnanimous. But now, when it's her turn, she says she's being driven to death by it. I didn't offer her comfort or fall into the trap. After she finished, I pushed her hand away. Looking at her expectant gaze, I said coldly, get some rest. I have things to do, so I'll leave now. George. As I left the room, Anna was standing outside. Her gaze lingered on me. Can we talk? She asked. What was there to talk about? I didn't even want to discuss the divorce. I just wanted it done. I'll ask you 2 questions. First, if your dad didn't bring up the divorce and just had a mistress, would you sympathize with your dad or feel sorry for your mom? Second, if your dad's had this mistress for a while, why did he wait until now to bring up divorce? After saying that, ignoring Anna's intense suppressed emotions, I turned and walked away. Anna's father had made up his mind. He would rather give up every penny than stay in this marriage. This stunned everyone. Anna had always been associated with a loving family and a privileged background. She had never experienced the hardships of a broken home. Her father was someone she admired and depended on. She always said she wanted to marry a man just like him. As for her mother, she was gentle and peaceful, someone Anna aspired to become. After graduation, Anna used the family's resources and funding to start her own business. She had achieved some success by now. So, she had never really faced the difficulties of society. The only real turmoil in her life, perhaps, was this divorce situation with me. I understood Anna. She knew she had made a mistake, but she didn't think it was that serious. She chose to apologize, but she believed that was enough. What was the big deal? But her father's situation seemed to have awakened her suddenly. She hadn't contacted me in days, but she often appeared outside our neighborhood. Her car would park there for hours. Then one day, she called out to me. We sat on a bench by the road. After a long silence, Anna spoke. I've thought about the question you asked me for a long time. Later, I asked him why he brought up the divorce now. He said it was because of me and my mom's attitudes. We were too casual about it, and that made him feel like having a mistress was acceptable. He thought I could understand him falling for someone else because I had done the same. If that was the case, then his divorce proposal should be easy for us to accept. Her hands trembled as she spoke. Her voice shook too. I went to meet the girl, hoping to convince her to break things off with my dad. But she said. The girl had told her, don't you also have a lover? You don't even want to have children because of him. You're just not brave enough. Maybe you should learn from your dad. How could he do that? Anna buried her face in her hands, crying. He and Mom always loved each other. The day before he brought up the divorce, he even hugged Mom before he left. Anna's tears weren't enough to stir any pity in me. George, do you hate me so much? She asked. I tightened my hand on the bench, the pain from a hangnail stabbing into my fingertip. I recalled the painful memories. At first, it hurt. When I found out you had a lover, I was devastated. But when he confessed to you and you didn't respond, I felt relieved. At least you hadn't betrayed me. But then you didn't stop. You kept doing those things, and it hurt me. You said you were just friends, that you hadn't crossed any lines, but when I questioned it, I felt like I was the one being unreasonable. Until you agreed to spend a night with him. That's when I finally understood. They say people in the situation are the last to realize. You didn't respond to his confession, not because you didn't want to, but because you couldn't. You were in pain, frustrated, angry. Even knowing he had feelings for you, you didn't distance yourself. You were too attached. And when you agreed to spend that night with him, you must have had other thoughts. What was holding you back? Perhaps it was your final sense of responsibility and moral boundaries. Anna, when I finally realized that you liked him, I hated you. Anna's gaze was filled with pain, but I felt a little of the knot in my heart loosen. But all of that is in the past now. Hate is too intense, it hurts both of us, and it's unnecessary. Anna, if you really feel sorry for me, then let's end this marriage decisively. Let's keep some dignity for each other. At the end of our conversation, Anna wiped away her tears that I divorced Anna on a calm and sunny morning. She asked, can we still be friends after the divorce? I shook my head. Let's not. We both need to start over. Anna tried to smile, but in the end, she cried. George, I'm sorry. I accepted the apology without hesitation, turned around, and walked away without looking back. Anna's parents were still causing a scene. I heard that her father had already set up a new home elsewhere. Her mother yelled and cursed every day, but it didn't change the fact that her father was determined to leave. So, her mother started taking out her anger on Anna. She blamed Anna for leading the way and influencing her father. The drama kept escalating. I didn't need to witness it firsthand, countless people were eager to fill me in. At first, I still ran into Anna a few times, but it became less and less. Her mother's outbursts were taking their toll, and both her father's business and Anna's company were affected to varying degrees. Some pitied her, some mocked her, some found it amusing. Even my mom couldn't help but sigh, it's a good thing you got out of that mess early, or we would have been dragged into it too. What's wrong with that family, really? I didn't respond. Later, I bumped into Henry. He had started a new relationship. He apologized to me, talking about the foolishness of the past, saying he had moved on now. He looked so relieved, as if he wanted to wipe away the bad blood between us with a smile. It struck me as absurd. Do you really want to apologize to me? You're just selfishly seeking psychological comfort. Mr. Gray, I have no obligation to fulfill that for you. You are the one who truly wrecked my marriage and my family. That guilt is yours to bear. And all I needed to do was cut away the disease and leave the baggage behind. I had work, I had family. A failed marriage would only cause me pain for a while, but it wouldn't ruin my life forever. As long as I pulled myself out in time.
I first met Henry when his cafe had just opened. To ensure his deliveries were on time, he asked if he could take the internal elevator. It was a simple favor, so I agreed. Later I asked myself whether other people would agree. Probably not, because Henry was handsome. And that brief glance was enough to leave me a little stunned the second time we met. Henry wanted to thank me, so he bought me a coffee again. I let him use the elevator. He gave me some freshly baked cookies in return, and just like that, we got to know each other. I started ordering afternoon tea from Henry for my office. We exchanged contact info. One day, I went hiking and bumped into Henry again. It turned out he liked hiking too. He shared some of his dessert and coffee with me, and I felt a familiar sense of comfort. Henry asked, "How about we go together next time?" I smiled but didn't immediately agree. I felt it wasn't quite right, but in the end, I said yes, because we ran into each other again at the same concert. That concert, George was supposed to attend with me, but he canceled at the last minute because of work. I didn't say it out, but I felt disappointed that Henry's presence made up for that disappointment. They seemed to share so many of the same interests. This kind of compatibility fascinated me. During a casual chat, I mentioned that I always gave George a bouquet of baby's breath. Henry looked at me with envy. If someone gave me flowers every day, I'd probably fall for them. My heart skipped a beat. How about I give you flowers? Really? Of course. I thought it was harmless. Just one more bouquet to order. So, when Henry said on Valentine's Day, "I wish I could have a beautiful romance. If only someone would give me a bouquet of roses." I didn't even hesitate. Do you have to be in a relationship to receive roses? I'll give them to you. I didn't think it through. Maybe I was desperate to prevent Henry from getting into a relationship. Did I like Henry? I probably did. But whether that like was love, I never considered it. However, I knew Henry's feelings for me were about love. How could I not know? Women are always sensitive to these things, but I didn't want Henry to say it out loud that I couldn't give Henry what he wanted. And I didn't want to that I had a happy family and a husband who loved me. To me, Henry could only be a friend. But in the end, Henry did say it, and it made me incredibly anxious. So anxious that I didn't want to see George. That I felt as though George's existence was standing in my way. That I didn't reply to Henry. That he pretended he hadn't asked. We went back to the way we had been before, but things were different now. That Henry's gestures grew more intimate. That I got pregnant half a month after Henry had said those words. I should have been happy. That I should have told George right away, but I didn't. I sat in my car for an hour, tore up the test result, and went to meet Henry instead. That I was so confused thinking about it over and over again. The baby, George, Henry. That I needed to think it through. That night, things got out of control. We embraced, kissed, and Henry undid my shirt. We were so close to crossing the line that I pushed him away. "No, it can't happen." I said, "Not now." I wasn't ready. That I was married. That I was pregnant. That I still needed some time. But what I didn't know was that I didn't have any time left, because George found out. When I opened the door and saw George standing there, my heart sank. At first, I didn't think things were that serious, or perhaps I was lying to myself. That I thought I had just made a friend I got along with. That I hadn't cheated. I hadn't done anything wrong to George. George could be angry, upset. I'd apologize, but that was all. Divorce, that was too much. Since George found out, my emotions have been on edge. That I kept swinging between guilt and frustration. When George was sad or hurt, I felt guilty, but whenever George kept bringing up divorce, I became so frustrated that I just made a mistake. That a mistake that wasn't so unforgivable. Why couldn't he just forgive me once? I didn't understand until my dad proposed divorce. That period of time, I felt miserable. And my mom was complaining too, complaining that George was being unreasonable and not generous enough. What's the big deal? He made it seem like the world was ending. Forget about the affair. No one's life is perfectly clean. If you want a good life, sometimes you have to turn a blind eye. She said this at the dinner table. My dad thought for a moment and then said, "So you think this kind of thing is nothing?" My mom didn't feel anything unusual. She just shrugged and said, "Of course. What's the big deal? That's how the world is now. That's how the world is now." Oh, my dad said, "I've fallen for someone else. Let's divorce. I won't take a penny." My dad had been with that woman for 2 years. She is 2 years younger than me. My dad said it was the first time he had ever felt this strongly for someone. I've spent most of my life working for the family and career. Can't I live for myself now at the end? Listening to my dad talk about his relationship with that woman, I felt like I'd been slapped in the face. That it was so similar to my dad and that woman. Me and Henry. So similar. I felt like I'd been stripped bare and thrown into the public square. Humiliated, embarrassed, my scalp tingling, but I couldn't run away because my mom fainted. First, if your dad hadn't mentioned divorce and just had an affair, would you sympathize with your dad or feel sorry for your mom? Second, your dad's affair hasn't been a recent thing. Why does he want a divorce at this particular moment? George's two questions hit me like a punch that I finally understood something. Only when the knife cuts into your own skin do you feel the pain. So what about you? George asked. What are you going to do? Can you stop disgusting me? He continued. At least your dad admitted it. He's in love with someone else. You, and I can't even admit it. You're worse than your dad. I felt like I was sitting on needles, trembling uncontrollably. Did I know that's not it? But didn't I hate my dad? I didn't understand. I didn't even want to speak to my dad. George, do you hate me as much? I was scared from that moment on. I finally began to regret.